Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, finance and accounting pros prepare for change and transformation. I'm your host, Tom Hood. I'm the Executive Vice President of Business Engagement and Growth for the AICPA CIMA. And today we're going to be talking about the innovation imperative, CPA, CGMA as change maker. Joining me is Amy Radin, who is actually a member of or just past member of our board of directors for the past 5 years at AICPA CIMA. And we're excited. She's a highly experienced, down to earth visionary and pragmatic innovation expert. I love that. She has had the unique opportunity to lead from the C suite of top brands, guide as a board member, and act as an advisor across diverse sectors for digital marketing and innovation transformations at privately held middle market businesses, high growth startups, and not for profits. She just finished this 5 year term on our global board of directors. She's been featured in numerous business publications and podcasts, including Forbes, Fast Company, Chief Executive, Smart Brief, and SHRM. She's the author of the Changemakers Playbook, How to Seek, Seed, and Scale Innovation in Any Company, awarded the Book Excellence Award for the Best Business Book of 2020. And you can see Amy and I live on stage at Engage 22 in Las Vegas tomorrow on June 8th, talking about finance innovation, adding XFP&A to your capabilities. Woo, that's a lot, but Amy, say hello to our audience.
Hello, audience. And Tom, thanks so much for having me on the program. Great to be here.
And it's the day before we go on stage to talk about this before our audience at Engage 22 in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being on stage with you. It'll be a lot of fun, I'm sure.
It is going to be a lot of fun. So, all right, let's start with your book, The Changemakers Playbook, which I'm going to bring my copy to get autographed while I'm out there. So I've got that right here in my office. And Changemakers Playbook, How to Seek, Seed, and Scale Innovation in Any Company. So you talk about this need for innovation. And we recently held a Future Finance Summit with a lot of major corporate CFOs, which we've talked to you about. And one of the things they talked about is this: how can they embrace innovation? Because coming through the pandemic, it's on a lot of people's minds and a lot of company agendas. And I know you love this, but one of the things the group said is we've got to move from the CF no to the CF know, KNOW. So what advice can you give us, Amy, to help us CPA, CGMAs innovate?
Right. Well, first of all, don't be afraid of innovation. I think innovation is often perceived in the CFO function as, risky, hard to quantify, indeterminate. And there really is a discipline around, innovation, de-risking it and increasing the predictability of it. There's also different kinds of innovation. You can incrementally innovate around your current business model, and that can be hugely helpful, while at the same time you're seeking those bigger plays that might be riskier and more disruptive. So I think be open to the fact that there's different kinds of innovation. But I think one of the best piece of advice that I give everybody, whether they're a CFO or a marketing person or a CEO, is you got to get out of the office and spend time with your customers. And often, the people in the finance and accounting function are someplace in the back, running the spreadsheets, running the models, putting together PowerPoints for the board and all that stuff. There is nothing like getting out and spending time with customers, especially in their environment, not in the context of a sales presentation or fixing a customer service problem, but just to find out what's going on in your business. What are your problems? What are your pain points? And you'll find by sort of opening the aperture to understanding their business, that's a huge source of innovation and understanding. So everybody should be in front of customers. It's not just marketing and sales. So I would encourage you to find the time to do that.
And that applies to internal customers, right? So, in other words, if I'm CFO inside a company, I should be going out and talking to the production department or the marketing department or other users of the financial statements and people that I work with as well, in addition to customers that we might be offering credit to or other things, correct?
Absolutely. It's just have those conversations. And, with the pandemic and people moving to remote work and hybrid work, we have to make that extra effort to see our colleagues outside of meetings. So, I always found in my corporate days when I was full-time in the office every day, those water cooler conversations or the conversations before and after the meeting where you really found out what was going on. And so I think put yourself in a position to just build relationships and understand the business from the perspectives of your colleagues. And it will really enrich. First of all, it's very career enriching, but it will also create context that will help you understand where the untapped opportunities are for your business.
Yeah, so it's funny because this Engage conference is going to be a perfect example, right? We've got record attendance coming out of the pandemic, and people want to just get together. And I've been at a couple events recently, and you're right, the side conversations, you can get more done in a 15-minute side conversation from someone that you just met or someone that that you reconnected with than you could ever do on a Zoom meeting, if you will. So it's a whole different kind of collaboration. And that's really what we're talking about, right? Innovation fundamentally is a team sport, isn't it?
Yeah, it totally is. And the thing about talking to your customers, whether internal or external, when we're getting together with colleagues or clients for a meeting, it's with some objective in mind, right? I'm talking about a conversation where your only objective is to listen and learn and understand the other person's perspective, right? And that's where innovations are discovered. So, give yourself a quota. Say, I'm going to have at least one of those conversations a week. You're going to find it so productive. And you can say, oh my God, I want to have more of these conversations, because you're going to find they don't take time away from your job. They actually help you be more effective.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I was fond of a concept I heard called planned serendipity, right? Because serendipity is finding something that you're not looking for. But if you plan those interactions, to your point, those conversations and getting to know your customer better, that's where that serendipity moment can actually bloom, and suddenly good things can come out of it.
Yeah, and it's also not looking for answers, it's looking for insights, and there's a difference. And I think we all have to unlearn what we were taught through years of schooling, which, the person who raises their hand the fastest and gives the answer is the person with an A. What I'm saying is there's more value in asking questions and just listening if you want to be an effective innovator than in worrying about shooting up your hand to give the answer.
Yeah.
And there's a very famous Albert Einstein quote where he said something, and I'm going to butcher it, but something like, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes asking questions and only the last 5 minutes on formulating the answer.
Yeah.
So you have to unlearn what you were taught in, school through college, and start to think, I'm not here to get the answer. I'm here to really ask thoughtful questions and listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's a big chunk of your book as well. So, all right. Now, the other thing I like is you talk about the behaviors of a change maker, right? Talk about some of these top behaviors and what we might be able to do to master them.
Yeah. I think, one is, being curious and asking questions. That's a really important change maker behavior. Another is valuing experimentation. So again, understanding that, if you're used to playing a role in an established business where you're operating at, full production capacity, and you just want, you want things to be rolling along, zero defects, you know what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. What innovators do is they're at really tiny scales and they're experimenting. And they're trying things, they're not working, they're learning, then they're adjusting. So valuing experimentation and supporting experimentation in your organization, which the accounting and finance professionals have a lot to bring to that, because when you experiment, you want to learn. If you're learning, you're setting metrics and figuring out the right metrics to set, which in an experiment on an early stage concept, guess what? You're not looking for ROI. It's way too early. You might be looking for, well, let me understand what the addressable market size might be, or let me understand the profile of customers who might be interested in this product. So bringing your skills to the table on how do I measure the success of an experiment, great innovator behavior for your audience. And another is having empathy, right? So I think that, CFOs are, numbers guys, and, they are normally guys, although we're setting out to change that. And, whether it's a retail customer or a B2B client, emotions drive decisions. Emotions always drive decisions. And so part of understanding customers is understanding not just their rational needs, what's the functionality of the product that they're asking for, but emotionally, what are the emotional needs that they're satisfying? And in a B2B situation, it could be the emotion around career success. They're looking for a product that's going to help them look smarter. That's an emotional behavior that we all have when we make business decisions. So I think curiosity, valuing experimentation, empathy, those are all important behaviors for any innovator in any function.
Love that. And the emotion one, you're right. It's too often we want to lay everything out in logic patterns and fact patterns and everything else, and we miss the heart, right? And it's the heart that make people buy ultimately.
It is, and you can't. Unfortunately, you can't plug empathy into a cell on a spreadsheet. Right. So that might be uncomfortable. But I spent a lot of my corporate career working in consumer lending businesses, and one of the most emotional topics in people's lives is money. And working with, for example, collections colleagues and compliance colleagues, and how do we think about the consumer's emotion as we're making a decision? And by empathizing with their emotions, how can we make win-win decisions? You get to a much more constructive place, both for your customer and for the business, than if you disregard the role of empathy.
Love that. That's a big insight. I like that. So, all right, now let's talk about our session at Engage, right? We're talking about finance innovation, adding XFP&A. I know that was I had to educate you a little bit on this idea of extended financial planning and analysis to the CFO capabilities. But talk about some of the key concepts in the presentation that you're going to talk, and especially this idea of being agile. I know we use the PT boat versus the aircraft carrier. Mm-hmm. When we were at our Future Finance Summit, one of the futurists talked about the idea of supporting the core versus the edge, right? Because every company's got those innovation edge projects. So talk a little bit about what you're going to talk about in that notion.
Yeah, well, I think, established organizations really seem to underestimate the role of speed in today's market. And since I really split my time these days between large enterprise advisory work and I coach a number of startup founders, it's, my head just whizzes around in circles when I see the difference in how the two types of leaders make decisions. And founders really recognize, perfection is the enemy of moving quickly enough to get there faster than a competitor. And when you're driving forward on an innovation concept, the things that slow established businesses down and keep them from being agile tend to be when they take the sort of industrial strength policies and processes and ways of doing things, 20 people in a meeting and all that stuff, and they say, okay, we're going to put our little innovation concepts that we're trying to nurture into that same, I used to call it the gauntlet. My corporate days, I'd say, by the time my team's concepts, have run the gauntlet in the organization, they emerge a shadow of their former selves. And so what you've got to ask yourself, what I recommend is, okay, we want to test an innovation. What are the risks? What are the costs? What are the benefits? So what's the problem we're really trying to solve here? And what are the sort of fit for the purpose of innovation processes and policies and decision-making approach that will allow the innovation to go forward and not get smothered by what's maybe eminently appropriate for a big business that's running at scale, but just kick the life out of a new idea. And, I think about the notion of a greenhouse. And innovations really require greenhousing. So a greenhouse, why does a greenhouse exist? Because when you have that young, fragile, plant, it's got to be nurtured and protected in the greenhouse. You're not going to put it out in the elements right away. So you take an innovation concept and you stick it out in the elements of your existing business, it's not going to survive. You have to really think about, how do I nurture those ideas separately? And how do I mitigate whatever risks may be there, so that I do what's appropriate to protect the innovation and also respect the bigger context of the business.
I think that's the right idea. And it's funny because agility, finance in particular, is the least agile of any corporate function, according to a recent study, right? Which I know won't surprise you, but we as CFOs have got to get faster. We have to get our speed up to the cycle time that the business needs, especially when you tie in the innovation idea.
Yeah, faster and be more flexible, because you really kill. One of the best ways to kill an innovation is also apply these metrics of a mature business. So I'll tell you, and this is a true story. I was, leading some efforts around innovation at one point, where my team would go to the CFO with their business cases, and CFO team would automatically cut all our revenue assumptions in half. I mean, first of all, that's very demoralizing to the team. But let's have a conversation about what is it you want to understand. That's not really a very helpful safety check. And let's figure out, if we're doing a tiny test to maybe a few hundred or a few thousand customers, and we're spending, tiny sums of money relative to the whole P&L, then our downside is that the test doesn't work and we write it off. But even if it doesn't work, if you harvest the learning from the test to improve the next time, that was an investment in your innovation. So really being more flexible and open-minded about metrics and focusing on what's the problem we're really trying to solve, what do we really need to measure, that's a driver of agility.
Yeah.
And it can help you. Just having that conversation can really make you a friend of the innovation team who do really cool work, and you might enjoy being part of it.
That's cool. I love that notion. And so, all right, let's talk about this. Now, we also, you authored a new course for us at AIC CMA called Innovation Demystified, Tools for Finance Professionals. So talk a little bit about what's in that course. What are some examples or tools that you cover in that course?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to tell you the motivation for the course. Back in my corporate days, I worked in banking, so about one of the most numbers-oriented businesses around, where it was all about what did you do for the shareholder, not only this quarter but this month and this week. We were very driven by show me what you can do and how this is going to aid the business. So being pretty practical, my team and I set out to build very close partnerships with the finance and accounting functions and the other analytic functions that supported our business, risk management, decision sciences. So that whole basket of analytic skills really became our critical partners to my team's successes. And so I became a big believer in, how can I help consistently build the ability for finance and accounting and analytics professionals to be strong partners to the innovation team, because I see it as such an important part of the success. And so that was really the genesis of creating this course. And plus, after I published my book and it was so well received, I was like, I have a lot of content that can really be utilized by accounting and finance professionals to become stronger partners to their company's innovation efforts and really drive their own careers. And so in the program, we really, we introduced what is innovation, because very misunderstood term, and, help people build the leadership behaviors and the skills to be effective innovation partners. And so very focused on, it's very interactive, very engaging, co-produced with Judy King, a former colleague of mine from earlier in my career, who's a leadership development expert, because a lot of innovation is leadership. And yeah, so I hope people will check out the program on Coursera, and obviously, of course, also check out my book.
Exactly. So I'm taking the course. That's going to be the next thing I'm signing up for. So for sure, make sure everyone knows we've got these resources. And I just have to thank you. This has been a time when all of our audience out there gets to spend with a leading innovation expert who's been with the largest brands and companies there are to the startup side. So it's really nice to have that breadth. And you've hung out with us CPAs and CGMAs for a while on our board of directors as well. So you know us.
Yep.
And we'll be speaking together, and I'm sure we'll have you at a whole bunch more of our events. So thank you, Amy, for spending some time with us today.
My pleasure. And I'm looking forward again to being on stage with you and being together in person.
Exactly. And so for everyone out there, just keep in mind the behaviors that Amy talked about, right? Curious, empathy. What was the third one? There was 3 behaviors. Experimenting. Okay, got it. And the idea of spending time with your customers is another big thing that for me that I got from that. You can follow Amy on LinkedIn, Amy Radin, or visit her online at www.amyradin.com. Look for her course on Coursera. We'll put it in the show notes, but Innovation Demystified, Tools for Finance Professionals. And thank everyone for joining us today. And don't miss our other Future Ready live sessions back here on LinkedIn the first and third Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Take care.